approximately half an hour to set this up today. So that was fun. And it still isn't set up the way that I was hoping it would be. But I'm going to keep working on that. I actually have lunch with a guy who is specializing in church technology and software and everything. So God works in mysterious ways. Before we begin, very quickly, I have to give you guys a room tour because we are in a very brand new location. I say very brand new. It's a brand new location. I'm excited about it. It is a much nicer room than last year. There are no nuns haunting the halls. We have, as you can see, the collage wall. I love the collage wall. We also have a lake view room, which is very exciting, to say the least. So, with all that being said, we are going to move right in to what we're talking about today. I had to test the microphone like a billion times, and one of the tests did include me smacking it to make sure that it works. It does. I had to listen to that. It was annoying. I'm not gonna lie to you. I like my hair today. Put it in a little claw clip. Anyways, as you can tell, I haven't done At the Cross in 2 weeks. I haven't filmed it in 2 weeks. I pre-filmed a few. So not only am I very excited to be back and recording At the Cross again, we're talking about one of my favorite subjects. I'm going to grab my water bottle, which currently has a light fixture on it, because again, when I say it took me 30 minutes to set this up, and nothing worked the way that I wanted it to. So, oh well. There's going to be developments. If you have any recording knowledge and you would like to give me feedback, you know where the comment box is. Anyways, so obviously I'm very excited to be filming again, and I am also very excited about the topic that I have chosen for this month. We are going to be discussing the Gnostic Gospels. This is one of my favorite subjects, I think. I'm thrilled to be discussing this with you guys. So what are Gnostic Gospels and why am I so excited about it? I'm glad you asked. So the Gnostic Gospels are pseudepigraphic religious writings claiming to have been authored by people like Peter, Thomas, and Mary. There are some like Judas, John, I think has another one, the Secret Gospel of Mark. It's a whole thing. Some of them are not inherently Gnostic. We're going to discuss what that means in a second, but they were found with blatantly Gnostic texts, so they got lumped into the mix. Okay, a lot of information I just threw at you at once. We're going to start with pseudepigraphic. What is that? If you want me to break down the etymology for you, epigraphic, epi means something that I don't really know, but graphic is like to write basically, and pseud means it's from pseudo, fake. So basically, epi is probably, I don't know, the person who wrote it. So it's a fake person who wrote it, roughly. And so the person within the text that's like, I am John, but it's clearly not John, that would be a pseudepigraphic text. The reason that we know that the person who claimed to wrote it, the reason that we know that the person who claimed to have written it, if I can get my tenses correct here, is because of clues that we find within the text. So significant deviations in writing style, theology, references to events, stuff like that. We can look at it and say, that's not quite right. And obviously, I mean, you can read the letters that Paul has written, and you'll see a lot of differences within that. But they're not major. They're still clearly written by the same guy. So that's what pseudepigraphic means. What then is Gnosticism? Why are we calling these Gnostic Gospels? Again, very glad you asked. You guys are coming up with excellent questions today. So Gnosticism is basically an umbrella term for more than 50 religious sects that popped up roughly around the time that Christianity was starting up. So some of them started before Christianity, some of them started after, some of them claim to be Christian. all of that. It peaked in about the 1st to 2nd centuries, but the thought process and some of the, sorry, I'm moving around a lot today. The thought processes and some of like the philosophies and stuff very much are still prevalent today. The name Gnosticism comes from the Greek word, and Dad, I know that you're studying Greek. I apologize in advance. I forgot to look up the pronunciation, so I'm going to make it up. So the name comes from the Greek word gnosis, which literally just translates to knowledge. So Gnostic, gnosis, gnosis? I don't know. Dad, tell me how to pronounce that. I don't know how to say things. And especially the Christian Gnostics claim that all material things, so everything that you can touch and feel, is bad. All of the spiritual things are good. So, like, your soul is good, your flesh is bad. So, the Christian Gnostics do not believe that Jesus was capable of taking on flesh and becoming man. What they propose happened, and this is, as my professor said, well, I'm going to explain the story and then tell you what my professor, Dr. Pavla, love that man, said. The Gnostics say that Jesus possessed a baby, or he possessed this dude when he was being baptized at 30 years old. And that's what the dove was. The dove was actually Jesus possessing this dude at the moment of baptism. And then when Jesus was dying on the cross, Jesus dipped out, left the dude, and that's why the guy was like, why have you forsaken me? But they translate it as my power, why have you forsaken me? Which, like, as my professor said, I personally would not worship a god who possesses a man and then leaves him to die on a cross and is just like, deuces. That's so rude. I can't, but that's that. All right. The Gnostic texts and where to find them. I thought that was funny. It's a little Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. Anyways, so, okay, there are two places that you can primarily find. There are two, like, things. Okay, so you have the pre-Nag Hammadi library and you have the Nag Hammadi library. There were only, before we found the Nag Hammadi library, which that is a very long story that I'm not going to get into today. If you are interested, just look up the NAG, Nag, space, HAMMADI, Hammadi library. There will be plenty of information for you. You can even just look up Gnostic texts. That'll do it. So, before the Nag Hammadi library was found, we only had 11 known Gnostic texts, and that led to a lot of disagreements about what Gnosticism actually was, what they actually believed, and it was a mess. So, okay, there were two that were saved and preserved by the church, by the Christian church, and that was the Acts of Thomas and the Acts of John. Again, both of them are Gnostic, but the church was like, that's interesting, and they kept them, I think. Then there were 3 codexes, or codex. I think it's codex. Basically, a codex is just a compilation. It's like a scroll, I think. Kind of like a book. It's basically a book, old-timey book. So in the Bruce Codex, there was the Gnosis of the Invisible God, or also called the Books of Jesu. In the Askew Codex, there was the Pistis Sophia, which is also known as the Books of the Savior. In the Berlin/Achim Codex, there was the Gospel of Mary, the Apocryphon of John, a summary of the Acts of Peter. So we didn't actually have the Acts of Peter, but we had a summary of it. And the Wisdom of Jesus Christ. And then there were 2 other texts that were found elsewhere, the Secret Gospel of Mark that I mentioned earlier, and the Hermetica. Cool. Then there was the Nag Hammadi library. And the Nag Hammadi library has a lot. There were, I'm glancing through my notes here, 13 codexes. And I was right. Each codex is a scroll. Should have just looked a little bit further in my notes. um, there were several texts that were found in the non-commodity library. Like I said, there are 13 codexes. We think that they were written in Greek, probably as early as the 1st century, maybe a little bit later. And then later they were translated into Coptic, which is an Egyptian language that's similar to Greek. It's like a mix of Greek, ancient Greek and ancient Egyptian, kind of, which is fascinating. There's also a denomination, it's like a kind of type of denomination. There's like a sect of Christianity called the Coptic Egyptians. Fascinating people. So they think, scholars believe that they were translated from Greek because a lot of the titles are in Greek. Some texts might have originally been written in Hebrew, translated into Greek, and then translated into Coptic. I copy and pasted this part directly from the website I was getting this information from because I thought it was hilarious, just the way that they said it. So this is regarding the secret book of James, which it's one of the texts that might have been in Hebrew and so on. The author of this book claims to have written in Hebrew, but then again, they also claim to be the Apostle James. And I love that. I think that's so funny. It's just like, can't really believe what they're saying because... So, again, not all of these texts are explicitly Gnostic. 3 of them are Egyptian wisdom texts, and one of them was a heavily edited, or in other words, as the website put it, Gnosticized version of Plato's Republic. Okay. I'm going to show you. Never mind, I don't know. These are all of the books found in the codexes. So I'm, for your sake, not going to read all of them. I'm still debating which 3 I'm actually going to be covering. There's one I know for sure because I've already started writing that episode. But there are, first of all, so many, and they're so good. Some of them are hilarious. Okay, I just tapped the microphone. I'm sorry. It's hilarious. They are so funny, and I cannot wait to get into all of them with you. But before we start doing all of that, before we move on to the next few episodes, why do we care about the Gnostic texts? Like, what do we do with this knowledge? First of all, don't believe them, okay? When we start reading through these, there are going to be some moments that you're like, you said what? And it's like borderline heretical. That's what we're playing with here, okay? Pretty much nothing in them is trustworthy, okay? The historians do not think that most, if any, of this stuff happened unless it was like copied directly from the Bible, which does happen on occasion. It's ridiculous, to say the absolute least. Nothing's trustworthy. Don't believe it. But they give us insight into the early heresies of the first church. They show us kind of what they can help us see what to look out for, because the Gnostics, again, they were all about knowledge. They were all about, like, I know something you don't know. You want to hear it? Let me tell you. And so they would just make stuff up. And I think that that's kind of similar to some of the things that we see today, where people kind of are just like, here's my truth. Here's my version of events. It's there are some parallels to Gnosticism that I see. So I think that it could be helpful for us to look at the Gnostic texts and kind of find those parallels. But the biggest reason that I'm going through this with you guys, the thing that led me to want to do this, is I think they're funny. Genuinely, they're so funny, and that is I just want to spend 3 weeks looking at how funny this is. It's basically, if you guys know what fan fiction is, it's Jesus fan fiction. It is Jesus fan fiction from the 1st century. And what could be more borderline heretical than that? So tune in next week. We're going to read the infancy gospel of Jesus. So basically, what was Jesus up to when he was a little kid? A lot. He was up to a lot. And most of it is sins. So obviously that didn't happen, because that would kind of destroy everything. But we're going to read through that, and it's going to be hilarious, and I cannot wait. And the next 2 weeks, I'm going to figure out. And after that, oh, it's September. So after that, it's Reformation month, baby. All right, I'm going to go get lunch and figure out all of this with my lovely, lovely friend, Zach. And I will see all of you next week.